from the CLE business a little bit. You know, and I decide to, you know, for $100 I'll make you a certified property specialist, whatever. Well, that's actually illegal in Minnesota. Except in Minnesota, I not had seal of approval of the state. So in Minnesota, what would have to be done with, you know, the lawyer would have to disclose that as that. You know, I'm a certified real property specialist by the CLE Society of Professional Accreditation, but the CLE Society is not an officially recognized organization. In Iowa, nobody is officially accredited, so you have to specify that. Now, so that's communications regarding your field of practice. And if that's, of all the, you know, if anything needed monitoring like that, that was kind of one of them. Because that, you know, made it easier now to provide truthful information. It probably helps potential clients make a better decision about who they should give as a lawyer. The rule on firm names has changed. Until now, or well, for the next 2 months, a lawyer in Iowa cannot use a trade name. It has to, so for example, in Minnesota, there's a law firm. I don't know exactly, but you know, there's Twin Cities Attorneys, PA or whatever, and that's the name of their firm. That's that's their return address. That's the name of the firm. Well, until now, that has not been permitted in Iowa. Basically, you're required to use your name. Well, that is all changing. You can use the trade name now, but there are some restrictions on it. Actually, maybe it was allowed to a certain extent before, but it's been opened up quite a bit more. But the restrictions on a trade name, not too burdensome, but a couple you have to watch for. First of all, you can't interact with a government agency or public charitable organization. Now, where you have to be careful there is if you have a geographic name in your firm name. Now, the example I gave was Twin Cities Personal Injury Attorney. That's probably, you know, not going to run into any problems because there is no political subdivision called Twin Cities. That is the, you know, an area of the state, or or southern Minnesota, or metro area, or Siouxland. As far as I know, there's no political subdivision called Siouxland. Well, where you have to watch out is if, well, I'm an attorney, I live in Hemsey County or Woodbury County. Well, I have to be careful if I call myself Ramsey County Attorneys or Woodbury County Attorneys. Well, you have to watch out there because there is another office, which is a government office by that same name. So kind of anytime you use the name of a city or a county, you have to be very careful not to violate that because there's already a city attorney's office and they're not a private law firm. And obviously your trade name can't be false or misleading. But other than that, there are really no more restrictions anymore on trade names. So now, you can, on January 1st, if you want, you can change the name of your firm to, Siouxland Trial Lawyers. Or I guess maybe Siouxland might sound bad for an attorney. Yeah, it's spelled S-I-O-U-X, not S-U-E. I guess that would be an interesting twist. Maybe that's $1 million idea. Give it to one of your careers. Sioux City Attorneys. S-U-E. But that is pretty wide open. Now, the thing though that has changed that you probably need to watch out for a little bit is URLs, and that's the terminology that they used in there, are kind of on the same footing as a trade. So URL, Uniform Resource Locator, or a web address. Now, they did not use the term domain name, but basically, yeah, trade names are not allowed. You were always allowed to have a website, and probably, if in many cases, would be able to be a little bit creative with your domain name. Well, now that is now constitutes a trade name. So, if your your email address, well, not email address, your website address, is www.siouxlandattorneys.com, well, maybe you had that address before. You know, you put the trade name. Now, you are subject to all the trade name restrictions that URL, including, and I guess I should point out kind of the big restriction is your a trade name in Iowa, unlike other states for attorneys, has to be registered with the state Supreme Court. And I'm sure they will come out with a registration form if they haven't already, and there'll probably be an annual fee if they don't have it already. So if you are using a trade name that is anything other than the official name of your firm, so if your name is John Smith Attorney and your email or your website is johnsmithattorney.com, that doesn't really count as a trade name. But if you're northwestiowaattorneys.com, that now qualifies as a trade name, even though you're not using it on your letterhead or your envelopes or you're not answering the phone that way. The fact that you use that as your website address is required. Now, interestingly, the rule does not say domain name. The rule says URL, and URL means website address. So, for example, if you're just using it for email, you have an email address, like clem.law@usa.net, or if I had something at richardclem.com, that's not a URL. That's an email address. So, although maybe I would be cautious and maybe register it anyway, just in case there was any confusion. Actually, I'll get back to that in a minute. A couple other points here I kind of skipped over. If you, this has always been the law, if you have office in more than one jurisdiction, you can use the name in both jurisdictions. So, for example, in Minneapolis, we have, big law firm, like most big law firms, they have office in other, they have an office in Des Moines. Well, Ms. Bakery and Mr. Benson are in Minnesota, but they are not in Iowa. But they are still allowed to be in Iowa. They're not admitted there. But they need to put note on their letter saying that they are. If you are elected to public office, your name has to be removed from your firm name for any substantial period of time when you're not actively practicing with the firm. But you, in Minnesota anyway, are in theory, it's not really in practice anymore, but in theory our legislature is a part-time legislature, and these citizen legislators go home and back to their businesses. Some of them practice law, and it really used to be. They went home and have the legislature was out of session, and they back to district did their job. Well, they could keep their name on their firm letterhead if they were here, because they're still actively practicing the firm. But if you're elected governor and that's a full-time job, well, they have to remove your name from the firm while you're away. So occasionally, we used to have a tradition in Minnesota with lawyers, and their firm names had to change occasionally. And then when they finished their term, they went back and they dug out the old letterhead. You can't state or imply that you're in a partnership unless you really are. And then I talked about here, first of all, watch out for geographic names because as part of a domain name. So again, that's maybe a little bit more obvious if your website is SiouxCityLawyers.com, or even Sioux City, or if your firm name is Sioux City Attorneys, well, you can probably figure out you can't do that. But if your domain name is SiouxCityAttorneys.com, probably I would change it. But in any event, you have to register that, unless it's just a minor variation on your official firm name. And interesting, I just checked, for example, DesMoinesAttorneys.com. I checked and nobody's using that, but somebody reserved it. Probably just, when it's offer politics that reserved it, hoping to be able to sell it in the future. But I would be a little bit careful using that because, somebody could argue that you're being, confused with the city attorney's office in that case. Yeah, and if it's more than a minor violation, again, have to a minor deviation, you have to register it. And like I say, I'm sure those instructions will be coming out if they're not already. That applies for a trade name, which you probably don't have yet because they generally have a lot. But if you have a website, make sure you do that for January 1st. So in my case, like I have a website, richclem.com. I probably don't have to register that. That's just my name. But something with more of a variation would have to. Another blue line that didn't come out here. I think I said if your email address is John Smith at HawkeyeLawyers.com, you probably don't have to register that just as an email address because that's not a URL. Although I probably would, just to be on the safe side. But a website address does actually register. Now, what I don't, maybe this is why they use the term URL instead of domain name. Let's say you called lawyers.com, I want a website. Well, some of them they set up with something, lawyers.com/John Smith. Well, that's the URL for your website, so you should probably register that one. Now, what I don't know about, and again, the printing didn't come here, but I'm set on findlaw.com, and it's not my website, but so maybe that clinches the issue. I think at some point they called me up and said, what's your address? What kind of practice do you do? So if you go to, findlaw.com / a bunch of undecipherable characters, you get my page. You get something telling about me. Well, if I was in Iowa, would I have to register that? That is a URL going to a page about me. I don't think that's intended, but maybe. So anyway, watch out if you have a website. Take a close look at that new rule because you have to take action on it by January 1st. Probably not going to change it, but probably have to register. So keep an eye open for that. And did I go over or under? I think I went over a little bit. So any questions or comments on that? Well, hearing that, should we take a 5-minute break? Okay, and then we'll hear all about criminal law.